Welcome to this explainer. Let's dive straight in, because today we are unpacking what is arguably one of the most high-stakes geopolitical standoffs going on right now. We're going to take a really structured deep dive into the current diplomatic gridlock between the United States, its allies, and Iran. As you'll see, we are looking at an intense situation where baseline expectations are just violently clashing, massive economic leverage is being pulled, and regional stability is essentially hanging in the balance. So let's look at exactly where things stand. To give you a real sense of just how tense things are right out of the gate, check out this incredible quote. President Donald Trump bluntly posted this on Truth Social, saying, "I have just read the response from Iran's so-called representatives. I don't like it. Totally unacceptable." I mean, what a way to set the stage for a negotiation, right? There is actually a holding ceasefire in place right now, but as this powerfully illustrates, the actual peace talks, they have hit a massive, seemingly impenetrable wall.
Section 1. The Negotiation Deadlock. Two mutually exclusive paths to peace.
Now, the core of the problem really comes down to completely incompatible priorities. The United States is laser-focused on demanding a suspension of nuclear activities and keeping the seas open. But meanwhile, Iran's focus is entirely different. They are demanding an immediate ceasefire and a total end to the U.S. naval blockade. So both sides are sitting at the exact same negotiating table, but they're bringing entirely different, mutually exclusive priorities. How do you even begin to bridge a gap like this when the starting lines are literally miles apart? Section 2. U.S. and Allied Demands. Breaking down the 14-point memorandum. According to a report by the news outlet Axios, who cited briefed U.S. officials, the United States laid out its requirements in a really concise, one-page 14-point memorandum. So the crucial points on this memo are, first, a strict suspension of Iranian nuclear enrichment. Second, restoring free transit through the Strait of Hormuz. And third, lifting sanctions. But, and this is a massive detail we absolutely cannot overlook, those officials indicated that the lifting of sanctions is totally contingent on a final agreement being reached. So that relief isn't happening up front, it's the reward at the very end of the process, only after Iran fully complies with the other demands. Section 3. The Iranian Counterproposal. Security, sovereignty, and mediation via Pakistan. Let's shift gears impartially and look at Tehran's response. Iran's semi-official Tasnim news agency reported on their counterproposal, which, interestingly enough, was actually mediated through Pakistan. Their demands are centered almost entirely around immediate security and relief. They want an immediate end to the war on all fronts, they're demanding a complete halt to the U.S. naval blockade of their ports, and crucially, they want formal, ironclad guarantees that there will be no further attacks on Iran. Basically, they want the military and economic pressure taken off right now, not contingent on some long, drawn-out final deal. And this perfectly highlights the ideological chasm we're dealing with. Just listen to this quote from Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu speaking in an excerpt for CBS's 60 Minutes. He firmly stated that before the war against Iran can be considered over, Iran's stockpile of enriched uranium must be taken out and that there's still enrichment sites that have to be dismantled. That is a very hard-line, physical requirement to end the conflict. It shows that Israel's baseline is absolute nuclear disarmament.
Now, instantly contrast that with this statement from Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian. He didn't directly reference the proposal itself, but he very firmly declared, "We will never bow our heads before the enemy, and if talk of dialogue or negotiation arises, it does not mean surrender or retreat." The crucial takeaway here is that Iran absolutely refuses to view any diplomatic concession as a surrender. When you have one side demanding the literal physical dismantling of nuclear sites and the other side firmly stating they will not bow or retreat under any circumstances, well, you have a recipe for total gridlock.
Section 4. Economic and military pressure. The battle of the blockades. So all of this builds into a very real physical geographic tug of war. The United States is actively enforcing a naval blockade of Iranian ports to exert maximum pressure on Tehran to agree to those 14 points we talked about earlier. And in retaliation, Iran is blocking free transit through the critical Strait of Hormuz. Both sides currently have their hands around major maritime choke points, trying to squeeze the other into submission.
Now, you might be wondering, okay, why does this matter to me? Why should I care about a standoff over a waterway? Well, because Iran's ongoing blockade of the Strait of Hormuz has led directly to a rise in world oil prices. This geopolitical maneuvering isn't just some abstract diplomatic game happening in closed rooms, it trickles down directly to the global economy, and eventually it hits all of our wallets at the pump.
Section 5. A fragile status quo. The timeline of an unresolved conflict.
Let's trace how we got into this bizarre holding pattern. In February, the U.S. and Israel officially launched the war. But also in February, a ceasefire was largely established, specifically to facilitate these peace talks. Bringing us to today, we have quite a disconnect. Just recently, President Trump repeated his expectation that the war will be over quickly, despite the fact that the negotiations are, as we've just seen, at a total standstill. The ceasefire is largely holding, leadership predicts a swift resolution, and yet, the core demands remain fundamentally unaligned.
Which leaves us with this final, incredibly provocative question to think about. Can a fragile, temporary ceasefire actually survive when both sides view the other's fundamental demands as totally unacceptable? It's a massive gap in expectations, and history tells us that eventually something has to give. I really hope this explainer helped you visualize and structure exactly what's going on behind these complex headlines. Thank you so much for joining me to unpack this source material today, and as always, keep asking great questions.